Bum ba da bum ba bum ba da bum ba ba da ba da ba da ba da ba ba. And there goes the rubber band. Hey, it's Tankenka, and this is Tankenka's Ashes, my Ashes of Creation channel. And I haven't posted anything on this channel in a long time, about a year or so, not since the Apocalypse was released. And we got just on the 18th, so I'm actually a couple days behind. I didn't check my Discord information, but as of the 18th, the verbal NDA has been lifted from the Ashes of Creation Alpha. So what this means is that I can talk about my experiences, but I still can't show any screenshots or show any visuals of the game, show any videos, etc. So until the visual NDA part is lifted, unfortunately, all I can do is talk about it. So Ashes of Creation, closed alpha or pre-alpha. This is not Alpha 1, which will be coming out later in a couple of weeks or so, I think, or next month. Yeah, anyway, it's on their website, which is in the links below. So please remember to subscribe, share, thumbs up, and comment. That would be fantastic. So where do we start? There's a lot to unpack. This is a really big, really ambitious project, and the developers of Ashes of Creation have just a huge variety of backgrounds in programming games and MMOs, and they brought on new people who are, some are interning, some are learning, some are experienced, and there's a great team of people who are on Discord who are basically relaying information, and if they don't know the answers, they go and check with one of the developers or make a call or a video connection, that kind of thing. So for the first part, I want to make a shout out to the people who were the moderators and the developers who are on Discord and who are actively engaging with the community. Thank you so much. That took I know how much work that is. It can be so exhausting. And I think we had 12 hours of gameplay or 11 hours of gameplay, something like that, just a huge amount of time, or 14 hours at 9 a.m. to 11 p.m., something around that. It's a little disjointed for me because I'm sort of connecting from Japan, and they were sort of on the ball. They had little quick hot fixes that were being fired out, and there's a lot going on. So where do I start? Logging in and setting up, getting the client and installing the client and patching and sort of updating and sort of fully installing the game and stuff was really painless this time around. It had a really good connection, even from the other side of the planet, because their servers are Eastern Seaboard. And for me, everything else, I'm literally the opposite end of the planet, and it was really, really, I wouldn't say an enjoyable experience, because it's not really enjoyable to sit around and wait and download stuff, but it was a good experience, and it was really smooth, and I didn't run into any problems. Coming into the character screen right now, of course, they've just got kind of placeholders, so they've got 3 classes, 3 fighter styles, like fighter, mage, and cleric, and then dwarf, something that looks like an elf and something that looks like a human, and male, female, and then 3 heads and 3 beards if you had beards, or 3 faces. So very rudimentary. And the only problem that initially started was when you first logged in and tried to create a character. You choose one of, I think they had 7 or 8 servers. You choose one of the servers and you log in, and you couldn't create the characters. You had to reboot, you had to reload the client, come back in and do the character creation again, which is no problem because there's no detail at this point. You're just kind of this one, this one, this one, this one, and type in a name and go. And the second time around, you were able to click play. Sometimes the play button didn't register. It was kind of a little wonky with the mouse. You kind of had to move it over and then wait for a second to light up. So it wasn't as reactive as it could have been. So we'll probably see that. We will see that change. The other part was if you use a special character in a name, like language characters, for example, the E with the accent, grave, I think it is, the basically the E that makes the A sound. So if you look like cafe, C-A-F-E with the accent up, if you added that, so when I made a female character, my character's name is typically Fletz, and Fletze, I made the female character. I just was like, I'll try that. And then going into the game, as soon as you start, it basically wiped the E from that. So I'm hoping that they'll allow sort of localization of languages and other language characters for the character mapping in the game, for the name mapping. And so logging in, coming into the game, you start in basically a portal that comes in. I'm not sure if they will make that sort of universal. Everyone starts in the same area. It probably will for the beginning stages of the game until they sort of figure out how they're going to move people around the world. And it's kind of neat. It feels a bit cloistered because before they had it, it was this really big open flat, a big crystal in an open space and stuff. And they kind of built up the city, and there's more ruins around it and stuff. And that's okay, but I liked the crystal being out in the open space rather than covered over. So that's just sort of an aesthetic thing. But you come down and immediately sort of there's no real direction as to which way you're going. So you kind of have to wait a minute. The first sort of starter quest doesn't happen until you cross a threshold just outside, until you've made a point of going out. And I imagine they're going to start having things like, okay, go this way, and sort of like the initial welcome to the game stage, sort of opening quests and stuff. So that hasn't been obviously done yet. And I'm just going to pause here for a moment. Alpha is a really raw, bare bones game. Like it is just this is the nuts and bolts, right? Like it's gonna run, and it's the frame of the car without the sides or anything else on it. You have the steering column, the seat, the gas pedal, the clutch, the just like the pieces. It runs, and that's about it. Anyways, so back to the thing. Come in, and one of the big problems with the current client is that the mini map is 100% transparent, and not the objects on the map, but the map itself, where it's like 95%. So you just this ever so slight line that you can sort of see with a grayed background in the characters. So it's really hard to see, because it's like if you're doing this and like trying to see my hand behind it, right? You can see the hand, but it just there's objects in the way, and then the stuff behind it kind of gets in the way. So you're like, well, what am I looking at? And you had to really peer at the screen. And once you have the quest, it shows up. All the icons are the same, so they will be changing that, obviously. So when you have the target of your quest, it's the same as the quest giver. And when you go, there's a bit of sort of wonkiness with the chat. And not chat for people, that actually works fairly well, but chat with the NPCs and the quest givers. So the interaction is a bit kind of rough at the moment. There are a couple of spelling errors here and there. Quests are really kind of just we're just filling it with space, right? So they're not like poorly written, and not there's not tons of grammar errors or anything like that. It's just like little ones here and there. I'm nitpicking in this one, but definitely the writing has not been implemented yet. It's kind of placeholder writing. Okay, you like this, grab me this thing, so there's that. And there's very little sort of direction. It's like, read this book. And if you've walked away from the NPC by this time, there's no way to tell where this book is, so you have to kind of like go back to the NPC and look, oh, there it is on the table and it's sparkling. And one of the quests they have is like gather resources. Now that's reasonable. Gather resources is a big part of games, except that they need to amplify the resource availability by about 1,000. Like a factor of 1,000, not less than a factor of 500, but a factor of 1,000 would probably be better, because I spent the better part of 2.5 hours running around through the forests, and not a single rock or a single tree could I cut or could I mine nor cut and some people had to run to like an entirely different place. So for a starting zone quest, that's just not cool. So there may be an issue with resource hogging. So I didn't actually encounter other people around me when I did find the resources. So I don't know if other people can like run up and take it and sort of do it faster and take it from you, or if like the kind of like first come first serve, and it's like two people running, this guy has an extra 2% haste, and as soon as they've started, they've taken it. And I do have a concern that the game, because it is it will be heavily PvP oriented. If they don't separate the servers to sort of, you have to set PvP, that kind of thing on your character, then they're going to have griefing problems. And if resource nodes are sort of mineable, but you can't come in and it's not for you. So for example, if I see a resource node, that resource node is visible. If it's visible to someone else, we can both mine it and then take our resources, and neither one harms the other. Then that will solve problems with griefing. But if resources are limited, are world limited, then basically means that if whoever gets there first can mine it. Now, Ark, another game, a sort of crafting survival game, has a problem. It's overrun with people who can play basically 24/7, who dedicate their lives to it. And the problem is that new players that log onto a server basically just get wiped out by people who are there all the time and have guilds that play 24/7. And that, you can kind of get started, but then you just get mushed. So if Ashes of Creation doesn't make something that protects people who are purely crafters, then it's going to be just kind of a grief fest. And you can see this on Facebook, and you can see this on the forums. There are already people saying, these pansies, whatever, we should be able to go out there and basically PvP anyone we want and take all their, they should drop what they're carrying, maybe not what they're wearing or their armor, but whatever's in their backpack should be a free for all. And I played a lot of games like that, and it's really not enjoyable if you have whole teams of PvPers that come out and their sole purpose is farming new players and stuff. It makes people want to quit. And there are ways to solve this. Ultima Online does a good thing with this, is they have zones and they have sort of tiered worlds. So we have Tamariel and I forget the original name, but Felucia. There we go, Felucia and Tamariel. Delucia, Tamariel. Anyways, so in Ultima Online, what they did to solve the griefing in PvP was they have city zones where in the zones, guards will instantaneously show up and kill someone who tries to PvP. Now, this doesn't stop people from PvPing. It does happen. It is possible, and people have it set up so they can basically set up a chest that if a person opens it, they'll blow up and they'll die, and then that person is flagged because they've robbed a chest. And they found some loopholes to kind of get around that. But they have another sort of layered world where this whole world you can PvP even in the cities, and it's chaos. But in the main one, you can't PvP in city zones or city borders. And then as soon as you leave a mountain, it says you're leaving, and it sort of identifies that you've left into a PvP area. Or into an open world area. So if they do something like that, it'll be better. There were some rubber banding issues, and part of that was due to they were basically doing a verbose dump of all information that was coming from the characters in play and dumping it to their server so that they could review it and see what's happening where. So if a player said, oh, at about this time this happened, then they can look at the logs and say, okay, here's the time they said this, this player, here we go, here's the problem. So they were able to target problems really easily. But that rubber banding actually made it unplayable, because you'd run, say, like this distance and then rubber band 80% back, 90% back, and then and I couldn't play long enough to get away from it, but other people had said that further out and away from the main starting area, out in the sort of deep woods and the whatnot, it basically stopped. So it was sort of a population problem. So that unfortunately made it really sort of uncomfortable, and it might happen in the Alpha 1, so in the next sort of rendition of the playthrough. And one of the other issues was with the rubber banding was where it pulled you back, it would lift you off the ground. And part of that was so that you didn't appear inside of something. So there was no accidental like spawning inside of the world and then falling out of the world. However, what that meant is sometimes you were, if you're running down a mountainside, you would appear and then fall and then either take damage. I died twice doing that. And that was a bit frustrating. So I'm hoping that they sort of lock it to world. They find a way to attach the player mesh to the world. And for the build of the world itself, there's a number of, early stages issues, right? The meshes are not totally sort of flush with the world. So grass sticks out sideways from the mountains. Some trees are floating, rocks are floating. There's invisible no-clip zones, like you have a wall that might be a hedge that just doesn't have a texture on it. So you kind of like walk into an invisible wall. There are slopes that you should be able to walk up, and it's just basically a block. You kind of run into this block coming up the hill. Monsters will kind of freeze and then take like 8 swings all at once. There's no auto loot yet. There's no there's sort of what's called Z targeting so far in the game, and basically it's either you have to hold the mouse button down to move and look around, and then it will auto attack. But if you have the free look, which is where you just press the button and you can move the mouse and look around, however, you have to tap attack every time, and that's a bit frustrating. Resources, again, are almost non-existent as it stands. It's really hard to find them. But when you do find them, they're pretty obvious. It's like they sparkle and stuff a bit. And I'm hoping they'll vary this a bit. I hope that they'll kind of go the route of Elder Scrolls Online, where, at first you can't actually see them. You have to come close enough to a tree to find it, for example. But, you can definitely farm this. You can definitely farm this, and you can look at it and you can see it visually in the world. You know that is a resource. But what ESO does is it has it so that if you put points into the skill, that starts to glow a little bit and sparkle. And the more points you have, the more visible it is from further away. So I hope they do that. What else? The quest givers and quest takers are basically, it's their name and it sort of shimmers a bit. That's about it. So that's got a long way to go. Crafting is super rudimentary. They only have 3 drop items so far, so you don't you can buy you can buy crafting tools. You can make weapons and armor, a very limited set. But what drops from monsters are basically 3 items, and those are just placeholders right now, obviously. So when you come in, it's going to be like farm the crap out of these monsters and then sell these items and then buy the items, and that's it. And then you can mine resources to craft your weapons and armor and improve. Creatures don't really have a high level. They're identified by a plus if they're an elite. So there'll be other things. This is, like I said, this is what you're seeing underneath of the nuts and bolts. So in the future, what you're going to see is things like fancy borders around creatures and different colors and armor with color gradients and information tags and a bunch of other stuff. One of the other things that we saw in the pre-alpha was the like if you have the character screen, the paper doll up, the hotbar at the bottom actually sat on top of the information bar, so you had to kind of look at it and it's like, what is this saying? So that isn't sort of removable yet, and there's no sort of there isn't a way to kind of move around the UI. There is no way currently to adjust the keyboard layout, and some of it is really not intuitive. So I'm hoping that they really work on and think about their default keys, because there's just some that are like in the weirdest places. Things like Z to change your mouse look, like free look or controlled look, Q for attack, and the standard WSAD, and it's just kind of like this, the very standard, we're going to cram everything over into this one side of the keyboard and then put everything up on the number keys. And then we'll put like a couple other things on the far side of the keyboard. So if you're playing, you have to like lift your hand and move your hand. So it's not intuitive at the moment. So when you come into alpha, if you're playing the alpha, the sort of the alpha 1, alpha 2, the more open ones, then that's something you definitely are going to expect. The graphics, for what it is, like given that this is an alpha, the graphics right now are actually tenable, like they're actually playable, which is a pretty big thing, because a lot of games that sort of come out, you know, the quality of the graphics being used right now is what you would expect from a finished game from a low-end studio with little to no experience, like someone who's kind of just pulling their work together. So what they've done so far with what they have out there is already at a level that is comparable to about a third of the games out there that are doing reasonably well, that are a little bit older, right? So obviously it's got a long way to go. There's no dingles. Swimming, they fixed a lot of water issues, which was good. I didn't get back to an old site that I was at in one of the other tests that I was in, the spot testing, and that had water kind of sitting on top of a hill rather than, you know, being flush with it and stuff. That was weird. But they had like invisible water in a lot of places, and, you know, it's just like you could swim out and fall off the wall into a place that should have water, so they didn't have the bounding boxes big enough. And at this point, you do swim in the water, except you swim on top of the water. And I don't mean like on top as in, you know, your head in the water like this. I mean, your body is here and the water is here. You kind of go doo. And some people were glitched, you know, they'd rubber band, and then they would stay swimming and swim across land, which was really bizarre. What else? The creatures are currently stuck in place, so the creatures don't have any active AI other than attack, don't attack. They sort of move a little bit. So one of the really big changes that people are going to see as it progresses is that creatures are going to start moving and they're going to start pathing. And I'm not sure, the spawn rate is okay. It's a little bit slow. And given the way most MMOs start, it does look like they're going to do here's your starting zone, here's your creatures, and we're going to have a radius outward, and then each sort of area has a radius and static creatures. So I'm hoping they break the mold a bit on that, and I'm hoping that they have random spawns rather than fixed ones. I hope they say, okay, in this rough area, creatures will spawn at random in these places. So, you know, it'll have X number of creatures, and if you kill one, then it will take roughly between this time and this time, and, you know, a random amount, say 1 and 5 minutes, and book, another one will appear or come walking in and sort of patrol within that area at random. I'm hoping they do that, but it's a lot to sort of put into a system, so I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But right now, the creatures are static, like full on old school. They just sit there and wait for you to come up and attack them. Some of them do aggro, you know, they're a little bit sort of distance aggressive, but that's not as common. It is more common with sort of high level mean creatures like griffins and stuff that come in. What else? Wow, 25 minutes. Sorry about that. It's a lot to talk about. I wanted to talk about this for a while. Can you tell? Like, it's really hard when I say you can't talk, NDA, non-disclosure agreement, not allowed to talk. And it's going to sit for a year and a half. I'm like, thankfully my brother's part of the testing. So I can, I was able to talk to my brother a little bit. Just because we both have the same access and have the same NDA, and we're both testers, so we can actually talk to each other. But I have so many friends that are like, "Oh, well, what's the game like?" And I'm like, I can't. I'm sorry. Check out Apocalypse. That's what it looks like. And yeah, check out Apocalypse. You can download that on Steam if you. Ashes of Creation Apocalypse is the as mentioned in the about part below. It's basically like Fortnite. It's a battle royale, radius that gets shorter and then you come in. So that's kind of some of the expectation that you can get out of this game. I do hope that they make some changes to that though, because I don't like the way they handle the combat system in that. It's good, but it could be a lot better. In terms of camera, so camera work, it needs work. Right now it comes to sit over shoulder, but you can't go first person right now. So it has this modern game idea, and it's predominantly from American games. I'm not sure why, but it's almost exclusively American games where the camera you can pull out, but you can't really pull out too far. So it's this 3/4 view out. It could go another 30%, which would be perfect. And then it stops right here over your shoulder and it like looks past your head. And it's like, no, you can't have first person. You can have like almost first person, like you're hiding on someone's shoulder and looking like you're hanging out in their backpack. And honestly, that is just like frustrating. It's maddening. And it's just like, you want to scream at the monitor, like, just let me go first person. I know I'm weird. I played a lot of FPSs. I used to be a competitive FPS player. So I'm used to playing MMOs in first person. And I actually do combat a whole lot faster and a whole lot better in first person in these types of games, which is one of the reasons I really don't like Fortnite, because, you kind of look down and, you're sort of looking at the whole world at once, and it's a different feel from a proper FPS, and it's just training, right? I don't have much experience in third person shooters, so with this like over the shoulder thing, it's really uncomfortable having this avatar sitting right in front of you and kind of blocking most of your screen because you want to look closer, and when you want to take a screenshot, one of the first things you want to do is like back it up so you can be first person, you can see everything. Which leads me to the scenery. So obviously there's still a lot of glitches, what you see in the distance, there's still like cuts in water. It doesn't quite draw the whole way out. It doesn't have atmospheric fog to sort of kind of cheat the view a bit. And so right now it's this perfectly clear world, and that's okay because obviously that's going to be layered on, and they're going to be weather systems. Eventually we're going to see rain and snow and wind and all these other things. They've promised us a lot of stuff. Like, I bow down to these developers, man. They are being super ambitious. Anyway, the views, even as it is, like I said, are really cool. And there's lots of really neat stuff, like the ancient ruins of a head sitting in the middle of a pond amidst a bunch of giant mushrooms in swamp and little cool flowers and stuff like that. And I can just imagine that when it really sort of unleashes, they're going to have, like little motes of dust and things like that. So, if you got a high-end system, by the time this hits, beta or early release and things like that, or public beta versus closed beta, it's at that point, when it's 80%, 90% finished, it's going to be a night and day difference. Now, once I have the visual NDA lifted, I have a whole ton of videos that I recorded to sort of, just in case I ran into problems on my system. And because there's also there's no screenshot button. You'd think for a game that they're testing, they would at least implement a screenshot button. There's no way to screenshot in the game at this moment in time. And if there was any one thing that I could say the devs really, really dropped the ball on, is they have to have, especially for testing, an in-game screenshot key. It should be maximum resolution, takes the whole thing and goes dump. And that we can choose where the file goes. That's all they needed to do, is press print screen or press F12 or whatever, and it goes. But it wasn't there. There's no screenshot. So basically it was like, screenshot was, you either needed like Windows Clip, you needed an external program, you needed OBS Studio running in the background, which is what I did to sort of throw it into my own folder, like the recordings. Or you needed like basically press print screen, Alt tab out, go to Paint, press paste, save it, set a new file, go back into the game. And that's just really ungainly. It's unwieldy. So I just recorded all of my playing so that I can go back and kind of freeze frame and then cut the frames and screenshot from my videos on my hard drive. So I have a lot of material, and I'm when the Visual NDA lifts, then I can at least put up something, obviously not 30 minutes long as this one is. I'll maybe something a little more like 5 minutes, and I'll put some music to it and make it more interesting, you know. So it'll give me some practice in making videos. Yeah, so I played 2 out of the 3 days for this one. The third day I had to work. You know, I could have got up at 4 o'clock in the morning and started playing before I went to work, but then I'd be like trying to teach classes and be like, sorry guys, I was playing video games from like 4 o'clock in the morning to 7. So I really, my like, the fact that I've been talking for 30 minutes says a lot. I'm not often impressed by alphas, because a lot of games don't give this much for an alpha stage game. But they have the mechanics in there. The movement is smooth and fluid. There are obviously a lot of structural errors and things that need work. There's, you know, cleanup of the world needs to be done. The writing needs to be done. The additional graphics and optimization, especially optimization, needs to be done. The resources need to be heavily tweaked. The quests need to be updated. The equipment needs more graphics. They need more items. They need. But right now it's basically a 40% game. And knowing that, and having done a lot of testing in my past, this is actually a really impressive sort of alpha stage game, and compared to all the other alphas that I've worked on in the past, not as a programmer, as a tester, and helping friends sort of develop things. This is really a rock solid foundation. So they are not making the mistake that a lot of big name companies do. Sorry. Darn that cold. No, it's not COVID. Where they basically say, here's our deadline, we're releasing it right now, and then damn the bugs. In this case, they're, I think, 2 years off the clock at the moment, and they were starting last year, and then they changed it and said, no, this is Apocalypse. We're going to use this as our battleground practice. And then they were like, okay, we're going to do this. And then they said, no, we're going to hold off on for a month. And then they tried to do something in February. And then right out of the gate, there were a bunch of problems. They said, we can't test with this. It's not going to work. So unfortunately, we have to cancel the testing this time around. We'll get back to you when we start another one, which is this one. And they wanted to allow us to do this test with no NDA of any kind. And they said, actually, no, we've got more to do. We can't let it go yet. So we apologize. So what they're doing is they're making sure every step is right, and they're letting it out when they feel it's like, okay, right, we've done what we needed to do, and we're in a good position. Okay, now we can move forward. So a couple of days ago, they lifted the verbal NDA, and here we are. I've been talking for 35 minutes, and I'm impressed. I'm really impressed. And as soon as they lift the visual NDA, I will post some other videos. So as the game starts ramping up and as there's more time to play, I will start doing live feeds of my video playing. I'm not 100% sure if I'll use YouTube or Twitch, but I have a feeling I'll probably stick to YouTube because I can. I don't know how Twitch pays or whatever. But if people think I should go Twitch with the game and then just do sort of clip together and published videos here, do let me know. That would be great. If you think that would be a better way to do it, then I will do that. I know right now I've got a grand total of 11 followers, but here's hoping that changes in time. So that's it. Tankenka and Echo out. Thank you for listening to my 35-minute ramble about on Tankenka's Ashes, about Ashes of Creation, now that the verbal NDA is lifted. And I will hopefully send a video of my playing as soon as we are allowed. And yeah, cheers. Thanks for sticking around, and I'll catch you on the flip side, and see you soon, I hope. Yeah. Ciao. Wait, I know. Sorry. One more thing. When the playing comes out, since there are no verbal NDAs, when the next test goes through, if it's allowed to be live, if I'm allowed to talk and I have no visual NDA either, then I will do a live feed here of the testing as I'm playing, so that there's record and you can watch the play through and you can ask questions and stuff as I'm playing, and I will keep the feed open for that. Okay, so that's it. Catch you on the flip side. Cheers.